You know, there used to be a saying that there were only two things certain in life, death and taxes. Well, we know that death's certain. We know that today is April 15th and it's tax day. I think you can add one more to the list. How about the Pelicans can't win at home? What in the hell is going on? Well, we're going to talk about that today. We're talking about the Saints draft odds prospects. I think Vegas is pretty much telling us where they're going to go. And for our special extra point today, it's tax day. That's the negative. But the positive, it's Jackie Robinson Day. We're going to talk about all that with David Grubb coming up next on the Dattitude podcast.
If you're looking for the latest scoop and in-depth interviews on the Saints, the NFL, the Pelicans, LSU, along with the best bets of the week, then lucky you. Along with high-powered, in-the-know guests who cover our teams, Jim Derry brings plenty of Dattitude. And he'll always tell you the way it is, or at least the way he thinks it is.
Where you at, New Orleans? And hello to my friends elsewhere, everywhere out there who are waiting to the very last second to do their taxes. Guess what? That last second is pretty darn soon. I don't know. By my watch, you got a little less than 14 hours. You're going to be one of those. I used to see those back when I was a kid or into my teens. The thing they'd have on the news, they'd have the people waiting in line at the post office, like to drop them taxes off. You're not going to be one of those. I mean, they didn't really have, it's not like H&R Block, you could do it on your phone and whatever. I mean, it's different now. But do people still wait in line at the post office to drop off their taxes? I don't know. Even I did mine, like I finished mine like last Thursday. And I'm like the last minute guy. So that's where we are. I said in the open, two things certain in life, now three, death and taxes. Well, Pelicans can't win at home. What in the hell? I mean, look, you know, they have the awful homestand. Then they go on the road and win games they have to win against good teams. And then they come home and stink it up. I told you that loss against the Spurs was really going to get them. That's the one that bothers me most of all. Going to get into it with David Grubb in just a minute. We got a lot to talk about today. Before we get to David real quick, I do want to bring up the Masters. And look, Scotty Scheffler is just on a different planet. It was kind of one of those tournaments where, look, you always root for Tiger, rooting for Tiger to make the cut, and it's almost like passing the torch time. It was so apropos to me to see Tiger playing with the lead amateur. I thought that was just kind of a cool moment. And I got up early yesterday, and I didn't care that he was plus 11, but I got up early to watch him play with this amateur and to see if he was going to have interaction, and then watch the amateur afterwards when Scotty was getting the green jacket and just talking about how playing with Tiger was the moment. I mean, that's a moment that kid will never. I mean, he'll be talking about he might win, who knows, however majors he ever wins, but he'll be talking about that moment for his entire life. I know I would be. That's something that he'll never forget, I'm sure. And, you know, one of the things about Tiger, and I know this tournament was about Scotty, but watching Tiger, at moments, he kind of looked like the old Tiger. The way he was driving the golf ball and different, but his putting just wasn't there. And I guess that's what you miss when you don't play a lot more than anything. That's what they talk about. But it was fun to just see him out there. So I enjoyed that. But Scotty Scheffler, man, you know, he's about to have his first child. And what a way to have your first child. Go out and play. It looked for a moment, and look, I don't usually bet chalk when it comes to golf, but how could you not bet Scotty Scheffler in this tournament? That was the way that I felt about it. So I did. I bet chalk, and you got a little close there. Morikawa, you know, pushed him in the beginning, ties him, and like, uh-oh, maybe Scotty doesn't have it today. And then you realize why he's the best player in the world, because he just took off, and he did what Scotty did. And the Masters, even though it wasn't this great ending, there were a couple things yesterday. It was still one of the most fun tournaments that I've watched in a long time. And the special moment, I know a lot of you probably didn't see this, but talking about Tiger, watching early on when he was about to finish up his round, Vern Lundquist, who was broadcasting his 40th and final Masters yesterday, and I think he's 83 years old now. But he was sitting back there at 17, and I knew he was going to do it. Tiger, hit a shot and he was waiting. He was standing there waiting, and he went and shook Vern's hand. And you talk about all these passing the torch moments. And as we get older, for you youngsters out there watching, there are special moments that they're not as special when you're younger, but when you're older, they do mean more. And I found myself tearing up. It was just great. There were so many great things about the Masters this weekend. So many special moments. How about a special moment now? Let's bring in David Grubb, and I know David doesn't really want to talk about the Pelicans. I mean the Masters, but I'll ask you your thoughts real quick. I don't know did you see the same things that I saw? To me, the Tiger and Vern moment was like super special to me, and I don't know why. Maybe it's because I do play-by-play on the side, and you do as well. And there are special broadcasters out there, just like there are special athletes in life. And Vern Lundquist is one of those to me. And to see that moment and him to go shake, Tiger's all business on the golf course, but to take time out and to go shake his hand, I just thought that was like cool as hell.
I think that, like you said, there are certain moments that in television or in sports that when they come together, they do mean something. And Vern Lundquist is not just he's transcended the role of play-by-play person, which very few people get to do. We know with the Al Michaels or Joe Buck, Jack Buck, excuse me. I'd rather say his father Jack than Joe, but. When you talk about those kind of people and their voices become synonymous with moments. I remember we just had the anniversary of Hank Aaron, 715. And so you listen to the Kurt Gowdy call again. You listen to those things again. Those voices take you to those moments. And there is an emotional response too, because they are a part of that moment for you. And so, for Tiger Woods, for anybody else, there's a certain part of the Masters that's hearing Vern Lundquist's voice. Even if you're playing, when you go home, those guys watch the highlights. They watch these things and they watch other tournaments, and they know what that feeling is. So I think, to take it and acknowledge what you add to what we do, I think is a great moment for a broadcaster, and it's a great moment for an athlete.
You talk about the Hank Aaron moment. That was one of our extra points last week. And as great as the wonderful Kurt Gowdy as Vin Scully made the call as well. And I'm just not a big fan of Milo Hamilton. I think it's because when I grew up, for the most part, he was doing Astros games, and I'm just not an Astros fan. We'll put it that way. But his call, I thought, was outstanding as well. And so you put all those three Hall of Fame broadcasters together, making that one call. I mean, they do mean something in a special moments. We're going to get to baseball in a little bit, but I want to get your thoughts. I got to lead with the Pelicans today. I thought I would spend more time this week. I thought it was going to be all Saints, but I can't not lead with the Pelicans today. And how disappointing yesterday was. Not so much they lost, David, but the way that they came out and almost didn't show up. They're so out-physicaled by this team, this almost old man team. And LeBron looked like LeBron again yesterday. 17 assists, 13 in the first half. And I don't know what it is about playing at home, but they can't shoot like they shoot on the road, and they just didn't have the sense of urgency that they had been playing with for the past week.
I got a lot of things to say about that the end of the season.
Hold on. I'm sorry, David Road, not to interrupt you, but we already have two comments in the queue that I'm going to show here. If you would like to comment, and I'll show them on the screen as we go along and have David comment on them as well, you're more than welcome. YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, please show them on the screen. We'll show them on the screen. Go ahead.
Yesterday was an embarrassment. There's no other way to put that. When you have everything that they had on the line, you come home and you've given yourself, like you say, you had the awful homestand where you blew a tremendous opportunity to lock up that top 6 seed. And then you go on the road, win 4 games that you probably, all 4 of them. It was surprising to take all 4 without Brandon Ingram in that situation, being on the road in some very difficult places when you talk about Golden State and Sacramento in particular. They go on the road and handle their business. Come back, you've got the entire city behind you. Yeah, Phoenix, of course. And you got the entire city behind you. They're waiting for this moment. You've got a chance to do 50 wins for the first time since were the Pelicans. Yep. You've got your first 5-game win streak of the season. You have not that is one of those things too that's an indicator of where this team is. the fact that you said you come into this game 21-18 at home, the fewest home wins of any team in the top 10 in either conference, and you have a chance to just at least get this last win against a team that's essentially locked into the play-in. They have no chance of getting into 6. They kind of want you, though. They want you. They've outwardly said, LeBron going into this said he viewed this as a 2-game series because he felt they were going to beat the Pelicans on Sunday, which they did, and now they have to play them again on Tuesday. So the Lakers came in talking about business. And I think you look at what the Pelicans did. You said they came out in the first quarter, no energy, sloppy with the basketball, turning it over, getting beat in transition. I thought there were poor adjustments made by the coaching staff. I thought they shoved Brandon Ingram into a situation where he should have been coming off the bench in his first game back rather than trying to integrate him with the starters who had a rhythm and a flow. And then there was no intensity as they got behind. You don't fall behind 30 points at home in the last game of the season when it means everything to you. There's no refereeing. There's no, all the things that people could point to at parts of the season. There's no injury. There's nothing to explain. Falling behind by 32 points on your home floor in that game. And like you said, physically getting dominated. And it's not the first time we've seen that this season. Nope. Orlando did it to them. Multiple teams have come into the Smoothie King Center and physically dominated the New Orleans Pelicans.
Miami. Before we move on a little bit further, this is what happens when I don't write a script. I forgot to read the quote-unquote legalities. But one thing that I definitely wanted to read that I didn't. Today is the first official day. We have a brand new sponsor, Evangeline Security. So Dattitude going forward will be brought to you by our friends at Evangeline Securities. You see their logo on the screen. We'll tell you more about them as we go along. They just signed up with us last week. We've been talking to them for a long time. We thank Evangeline Securities for being a part of this, of the Dattitude podcast and being the biggest member of the Dattitude family. And David Grubb is the CEO and host of the Hard and the Paid podcast, also a host on MLB Bros podcast, which is a big deal because, again, we're going to be coming to that later in the Extra Point. David, everything you said, I agree with 100%. The thing that bothers me most when you talk about, and yeah, I agree with you about Willie kind of forcing Brandon Ingram in there. He didn't look ready. Yeah, of course he made the shot, the buzzer beater that maybe the Pels are going to get back into it. But no, they went back to being who they were after that shot. But to me, what bothered me most is just the lack of emotion. And I don't know if it was because they came off this road trip and played so well, but you saw them fall behind in a couple games on the road, and they just kind of imposed their will and came back. So I kind of thought maybe that was going to happen in this game. But it's like you said, LeBron just came out and said, basically dared them to do something, and they never did. And AD looked like, 28-year-old AD yesterday until he hurt his back there towards the end. But I just don't get it. I don't get what is different about playing at home than playing on the road, because this team, obviously, you talked about their 21 wins at home, which is fewer than anyone else on this side of the playoffs. But what about their 28 wins on the road, which is more than anyone else? I don't understand. Are the rims any different on the road?
Yeah, you talk about the road, like you said, 28 wins to lead the NBA, and 14 of those 28 wins came against 15 of those 28 ended up coming up against winning teams. So it's not only they were winning on the road, they were beating good teams for the most part on the road. But yeah, at home all season long, there's just been this lack of intensity, this lack of focus. It's not just one bad quarter. It used to be the Pelicans, you go, the third quarter, that's going to get them. Now they're playing really only one good quarter at home and 3 poor quarters and having to try to ride that one quarter to win. That 0-22 record after trailing in the third quarter. Most of those are at home. Most of those losses are at home. And this is a team that's shown it can't come back. That's a mental issue. None of these things are athletic because obviously, like you said, you don't go on the road and win 28 games if you can't play. Right. If you had just done your job at home, this is a team that last year won 28 games at home. If you had just done your job at home, you'd be a number 3 seed in the West right now.
Easily. You just say you do your job. I just think of Sean Payton, but can't help it. We got a comment that kind of fits into what we're talking about. David Bordelon, he writes, the Pels are soft. No killers on this team. The Pels need someone with that killer instinct. Kobe had it. Michael, Larry, Magic. I think LeBron has it too. We're not, he kind of proved that, I think, yesterday to some. He doesn't have to prove anything, but he proved that yesterday. Zion doesn't have it. And I will tell you that I have been saying Zion is finally starting to look like the Zion we all wanted to see. And then yesterday, he kind of showed his youth a little bit. Not so much, but he got beat up a little bit. He got knocked down a couple bit. And what did he do? He kind of went off and I don't know how else to say this. Kind of cried like a baby.
For Zion, the biggest thing is, he's young. The second part of that is, he's not used to getting physically pushed around.
Yeah,
I mean, you think
absolutely.
about a guy whose entire life he's been the bigger player. He's been the bigger, stronger guy. And now in the NBA, there are guys as big, there are guys as strong. Now, they don't have your combination of all these things and quickness, and certainly on most nights he's a physical wonder compared to most people. But when you are being guarded by LeBron James, who's like, I'm as gifted an athlete as you are, and I'm 40 and I'm still, I'm as gifted, in a lot of ways, and I have all the tricks of the trade. And like you said, for a guy who's not played a number of games too, a guy who I think was just growing into, this is my team. I think there was some mental part of it that was taken away with B.I.'s comeback. I know that they all wanted to say we were excited as a team that B.I. was coming back, but I think on the court, quite frankly, it is obvious to me that Zion and B.I. don't fit. And there is a deference that Zion goes into when B.I. is on the floor because B.I. is the older guy. Those certain things. I think there is he steps back, whether he chooses to, or it's just one of those things that he does by nature. He steps back when B.I.'s on the floor, and you can't have that.
He does.
And I think he was rightfully criticized yesterday for not stepping up in that moment. But at the same time, it's an entire team loss. But I would say, yes, up and down this roster, if you're asking me, are there a lot of guys who I think fit the mold of people who would do anything to win? Herb Jones, yes.
Yep.
I think Herb Jones would do anything to win. Jonas Valanciunas, I think, is a pro and a guy who will fight. He has his limitations. But if you're asking me 12 for 12, especially amongst your top 5, no, there's not a lot of guys who are going to die for a win. And your best 2 players, Brandon and Zion, I don't think either one of them is the kind that's an assassin type. Though Zion is still talent-wise good enough to win multiple series.
And unfortunately, I think CJ backed off a little bit too with Brandon in there, and he has been the glue through the 12 games that Brandon Ingram missed. So I think that's a problem. Gabe Henderson's in the green room saying, yesterday was LeBron saying he saw Dattitude a couple weeks ago and that I said MJ is better than him. He is. I'm sorry. He is. I don't want to get into that old debate today. Michael Jordan is the best athlete that has ever lived. Hands down. I'm sorry. I'm not arguing about this today. All right. There was something before we talk about the series that's coming up and the play-in that's coming up. There was something on TV this morning that bothered the ever-loving hell out of me, and I want to bring it up here. It just kind of shows the mentality of the media today and why people want to turn the media off. Mike Greenberg had a segment this morning, and it was about, should the Lakers rest their starters against the Pelicans so they can avoid the Nuggets, whom they just can't beat, quote unquote? Why are we having a segment about what the Lakers should do when the Pelicans are favored? I know they lost yesterday. I know they stunk up the joint. It is what it is. But why are we talking about the 8 seed when we should be talking about what the Pelicans, and yeah, they were a disappointment, but what about talking about Steph in his last run? What about talking about the Kings and them making a push or whatever, talking about Oklahoma City getting the top seed? What about all that? Why do we have to continue over and over again what is best for the Lakers? That's not what the NBA is about, and that's why so many people get turned off and get sick of all this.
This media is lazy for the most part, and they want the easy, low-hanging fruit. And I think women's basketball. Let me use this as an example.
Oh,
For
perfect
all the
example.
years that they said that women's basketball wouldn't draw an audience, right? They kept telling you there's no audience there. Well, the pandemic forced, because there wasn't a lot of content at the
Agreed.
time, it forced them to fill these hours, and they had to fill it with women's basketball at the time. And so we've seen since 2020 this steady growth because you introduced an audience to something that, hey, oh, I hadn't seen this. I'm entertained by it. And it's grown over these 4 years.
But then they want to hang on
So
one player.
yeah. And so if you want to sit there and you want to go as a producer and say, I just want to, I know the Lakers are easy, or I know the Yankees are easy. I know this topic will Jordan, LeBron doing this debate every week. I know people will tune in. Well, of course, you know that because you've seen that. But innovation or growing your audience is talking about other things. And there are people, the world is no longer geographically limited. So there are Pelicans fans. We've seen them. There was just a guy yesterday in the game, his first NBA game ever, flying in from England to watch the Pelicans in New Orleans. And the world has grown like that. So there are fans of every team in every corner of the world. And I think that these networks are doing themselves a disservice by not
Agreed.
tapping into these groups and focusing just on, we know this base exists. Well, by doing that, like you said, you have created this, you have fed into the monster, which these leagues and networks don't want, that everything is about the ratings, because you keep telling me it's about the ratings, which teams you don't want to see because the leagues don't want it. Well, what you're doing is convincing the fan bases that this is all manipulated. And whenever something goes on, whether it's the referees, whether it's a loss, whether it's something that doesn't feel right, all of this has perpetuated this feeling that we are moving further and further away from sport to sports entertainment, and that what we are seeing is not real. And if I feel that as a fan, if I feel that as a writer, if I feel that as a sports host or whatever, and I start going to that route, the product changes dramatically. And we're just talking about wrestling, no matter what the sport is. We're just talking about wrestling.
You know, when people talk about the sport is fixed and all this, and I'm not just talking about the NBA, I'm talking about every sport. Mm-hmm. They think people, the cynics, the people who think that it goes across every sport, and it's not true. The sports not. I mean, you can have moments where I think certain moments could be fixed, and I mean, we go through and talk about different things and different players, and people are getting caught up in different things. We got to spend a segment on the whole Shohei thing. I think you and I are wondering what the hell's going on there, but in general, I think that the overreach that people think the league has on certain moments is overdone and overblown. But when you have a media, like you say, perpetuating this thing and constantly talk about the Lakers, I mean, you're pissing off the fans of the Pelicans. You're pissing off the fans of the Golden State Warriors. Pissing off the fans of the Sacramento Kings. What about the Denver Nuggets? What about the Oklahoma City Thunder? What about the Minnesota Timberwolves, who had an outstanding year? They went from play-in to the 3 seed, almost won the 1 seed. I mean, I just don't get the thought process of this media. And if you're a producer sitting in a room, what are we going to talk about tomorrow? Are you that freaking lazy that you're just saying, you know what? Let's just talk about the Lakers again. Everybody wants to hear that.
I mean, you're ESPN. You have a monopoly essentially anyway.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like so you could talk about whatever you want. You're the tone setter. You decide what the conversation is. So by going into this default of every day we're going to talk about the Lakers, or every day we're going to talk about the Yankees, and I'm a Yankee fan, but I don't want to see the ESPN talking about the Yankees every day because I love baseball. So tell me about what's going on across the sport. You know, like when you do this, like you say, you are turning off large segments of the audience. And also what you're doing is you're not bringing in new people, because everybody's not going to be a fan of the same teams. So if I want to be a fan of Anthony Edwards in Minnesota, if I am a fan of Domantas Sabonis in Sacramento, whomever my favorite player is, I'm never seeing them on the national shows, because all y'all want to talk about is the Lakers, who are in 8th place and have been in 8th place or lower all year. And like, we're constantly talking about the Lakers as if they're a first place team. No, we didn't even do this when Kobe was bad. When at the end of his career, when the Lakers were bad, they were not a frontline story like this every day. And it's just, it's sad and it's lazy.
What about Nikola Jokic? He's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, like, the guy is on pace to probably win his third MVP in 4 years,
Yeah.
and he's never on television. It's
He's
not that you don't
not.
have to, like, he's not going to do a bunch of interviews. Fine. But his games aren't even on television a lot.
Yeah, well,
You talk about a guy who plays basketball the right way on both ends of the floor, does everything, shows up every night, and no one puts him on TV.
I agree. And guess what? They're going to have to put him on TV now because I don't see. Look, I know they're the 2 seed, and it's almost like they're just kind of like a cat and a mouse. They just kind of play around like, all right, we're bored. We're going to take a couple days off, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I know the Spurs beat them, and that cost, look, the Spurs cost the Pelicans the playoff spot. The Spurs cost the Nuggets the number 1 seed. That's kind of interesting, I think, by the way. All right, we're going to get back into the Pels part of this thing. Donna Williams, she still watches her Pelicans as we're talking about people watching their team. She was hoping to be shocked and impressed. I don't think I would have been shocked. I would have expected the Pels to win, honestly. Our team has extremely low basketball IQ, don't know when and where to make adjustments. You know, I'd like to argue with that, but after yesterday, I think for the most part, look, Willie's young too. I think that's what people don't understand. We talk about Zion being young. Willie is still in the infancy of his coaching career. This guy's going to be coaching for a long time, whether it's with the Pelicans for a long time or whether he steps up and gets another job at some point or whatever it is, whether he wants to leave. I think he'll be here as long as he wants to be here. But that being said, there are moments, and you talked about it yesterday, enforcing Brandon Ingram in some weird rotations at different times. And you know, watching JV come into the game and then he disappears and goes off in I don't know where he goes for 20 minutes. And just different moments like that does bother me about Willie Green. But overall, I think this guy is going to be a great coach. I think he's still learning too.
So it's hard to complain about your head coach when he's taking you from 32 wins his first year to 49 wins.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, he's improved steadily each year. There are issues with any young coach. And I think Willie has to be protected from himself at times. That's a failure on the front office's part in the roster construction. You know, they put together a roster that Willie tends to have of too many guys who are exactly the same that Willie fell in love with. You know what I mean? Like Larry, Najee.
Yeah, I agree.
There's like, you have 5 guys essentially who do the exact same thing. And Willie loves all of them. So he keeps playing them in these weird combinations. And you didn't give him enough length because Larry Nance, we've seen it. He just gets abused by bigger centers. It's happened over and over again. The defensive ratings don't lie. The offensive ratings don't lie. Larry struggles. But Willie has this attachment, I think, to guys who work hard and do things because that's the kind of player he was. And he's a young coach, so he goes to these defaults. And I think you need to protect him from those things. That's why they brought in a James Borrego to help him offensively. And during that road streak, they were playing Borrego offense. You come back and those things change again. So I think, you know, you have a bunch of young players on one side of this team who are all trying to establish themselves. You have veterans who have habits, and then you have a young coach figuring himself out. I don't think this is a low basketball IQ team in general, but I think adjustments, absolutely. Adjustments are hard for this group. Changes in like big changes for this team at all, or even subtle changes, any type of change to their routine or situation, they struggle to adapt quickly. It takes them either a quarter or two within a game, and it can be too late, or it takes them multiple games due to an injury or something to figure things out. And that has been their biggest struggle. They don't deal well with adjustments.
You talk about attachments. What's his, I know this isn't a word, but what's his disattachment with Valanciunas? I just don't get how he plays him, and at times doesn't play him a lot. You know, he gets in the start, he's in the starting lineup, and then he goes back to the bench and sometimes doesn't even come back the rest of the half. And it's not when he's in foul trouble. To me, like yesterday, he's your big physical presence. He's your guy that can, you know, beat up guys in the middle a little bit, and you're just getting destroyed down low. I mean, AD's running down a lane like, you know, it's like free reign. It's like the buffet's down underneath the net and nobody feels like eating. I don't know what's going on. What is the deal with Valanciunas?
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that Jonas Valanciunas will not be re-signing with the Pelicans next year. You know, he goes into this, he's going to be an unrestricted free agent, and it's insulting to him because he's the only player on this team that played all 82 this year. He's the only one. He's missed 3 games in 3 years since he came to the Pelicans.
Yeah.
He's there every night. And as you said, he's their only physical presence down low on a consistent basis. He had more rebounds. He played, I think, 6 minutes in the first half and then didn't play till the fourth quarter.
I just don't get it.
And he had more rebounds in those 6 minutes than Larry Nance had the entire game.
What do you think? What do you think the issue is? I mean, there's got to be something. I mean, you don't start him and then do that. I mean, and this isn't the first time he does. It happens all the time. Can you like read tea leaves, or is there anything that you have a feeling that it might be?
They've decided that they want to switch, and they think that Jonas obviously is not a switch defender, but the stats show that Jonas is actually, it's not him. That's the problem. He's not a great defender. No, I'm not going to sit here and lie to people and tell you he's the most mobile center in the world. But the problem is usually on the perimeter. And you saw it against the Lakers. The problem wasn't the back end. The problem was the front end, because the guards were coming off of screens and going straight downhill. They scored 50 points in the paint in the first half.
That's insane. 50 out of 70.
They outscored the Pelicans 50-12.
Yeah.
50-12 in the paint in the first half. That ain't on Jonas. He wasn't on the floor.
Yeah,
and it wasn't happening. You know what I mean? Like, most of it was turnovers and lack of guard defense and lack of perimeter defense. Guys not doing their job on that level. So yeah, I think he's been unfairly made a scapegoat, and the coaching staff has lost games because of it. Jonas, again, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. He's very valuable. No, he shouldn't play 40 minutes a night. He's not a 40-minute. He didn't play. He's never played 40 minutes in his career. He's always been a 28 to 30-minute center. So we know what his effectiveness is, but taking him down to, like, their nights, 7 minutes, 10 minutes. It's gotten to be ridiculous. And I think in the playoffs, if they go to this, it's a losing strategy, because the game slows down and Jonas is your best rebounder. And this team got beat up on the glass again yesterday as well.
I think the equipment manager might have started using Tide Extra Soft or something. Maybe the jerseys were like, ooh, this feels nice. I want to go to bed. I don't know. But that's kind of how they were playing, Extra Soft. But,
Stanza changed to all cotton.
Exactly. You work those Yankees uniforms, baby. Work the Pelicans. Maybe I'm rigid. I don't know. Go to polyester or something. Either. No, don't wear the black ones.
They're the only uniform the Pelicans have this season they have a losing record in. They are 8-10 when they wear the black uniforms.
I got to say, and I know I'm in the minority when I say this, but I know people like them, and they are cool looking, but it's not their colors. I hate when they wear those things. They're not black. They're not neon green. Could you at least make some kind of like thing that jived with their real colors? It just bothers me.
I'm a fan of the red jerseys. I'm a big fan of the red jerseys.
So am I. And they wore, I don't know. Don't get me started on uniform. We got too much other stuff to talk about, because I do want to go on to a couple other things, but I do want to talk about this matchup again. Here's what I'm hoping, David. I'm hoping that the LeBron talk and the stuff that they're reading this, and you remember when the Miami Heat pounded the Pels and Jimmy had a little smack talk going on there, and we just beat the Pels. We own them. You got to hope that the Pelicans come out tomorrow night and say, you know what? It's kind of the same thing, isn't it?
Or do you have pride?
Exactly.
What's your pride? Like, this is the ultimate challenge of what you are as an athlete, because you just got beat by this team. Not only did you get beat, you got embarrassed on your home floor. You get this chance again to prove to them, because your worst losses this season in general have come to the Lakers. The 3 times you've lost to them, they've all been pretty bad. The in-season tournament was embarrassing. This was embarrassing. So these losses, and the one time you beat them pretty good. So you're capable. This is everything. Because they've got 2 chances. They can lose this game and still have another chance to get in. Sure,
you don't want to do that.
But you don't want to put this position, because think about that. That was something that we discussed in the press box yesterday. Could you imagine what the reaction would be by the fan base if you lose 3 straight at home and miss out on the playoffs?
No.
Could you just imagine?
Somebody ticket sales.
It really is not. And it does not send you into the offseason of the fan base thinking that next year's going to be better. It makes you feel like you're being sold a bill of goods. that they're just trying to give you a team that's good enough, that they're not really committed to a championship. That's the scary part of it, is that fan bases are so fickle about that. Belief is a weird thing. Do I really believe you're getting better? Or are you selling me something that's kind of like, you put it in a package that says new and improved, but it's still the same product.
That's a great segue, David Grubb. It sounds like another team that's in New Orleans owned by a Benson. Who could I be talking about? Oh, yeah, the New Orleans Saints. They're about to have a draft, and they're kind of like giving us a product just good enough to make people think that maybe they can make the playoffs, but who cares? Even if they make the playoffs at this point. And I put the odds up there right now. These are the odds at DraftKings. This is embarrassing to me. All right, you're 3.8 to 1 to even win your division against three crappy teams, in my opinion. Okay, I don't care that the Atlanta Falcons got Kirk Cousins, and we're going to have the Orlando Ledbetter on Wednesday, and I can't wait for that. I cannot wait to talk. I've been wanting to talk to him for years, and I finally get my chance on Wednesday. But who cares if the Falcons are better on offense? But plus 380 to win the division, plus 4,000 to win the count, plus 8,000. These are like pre-Sean Payton numbers, and they're embarrassing, and it bothers the hell out of me.
This is an organization that I think is lying to itself. It thinks it believes it's a couple of moves away, or it wants you to believe that. I think in reality, I think Mickey Loomis knows exactly what he has. He's not.
I don't know. I think they believe it. I think they really believe it. Like right on the precipice. I truly believe that.
My gut says to me that this is the business part of it. Is that they figure again, making the playoffs is enough, and in the NFL, you just got to get hot. And I think that they're taking a calculated risk here, that they just have to get hot. And you win a couple of games because they've seen mediocre teams do it before. And I don't buy it, because I don't see a position. If somebody asked on Twitter or X the other day, what's the Saints' most solid position? And outside of cornerback, I can't think of a single position on the field where I'm like, I feel really
they don't really need help there. I mean, I guess you could say, in theory, I think they're pretty solid at linebacker. I wouldn't call them elite. Yeah. But I think they're solid
you have
at
the
linebacker.
Oldest starting linebacker in the league, and you have your second linebacker is undersized, your third linebacker is a career backup. So it's like, okay, you know what I mean? Like,
Willie Gay is going to have I think I'm looking forward to him coming in and playing on that 1-year deal contract, and him having a chance to show off. No,
he's got a chance, but I mean, like your bona fides are, this is what it is, and it's so you can feel okay about the linebackers, but you don't feel like you said, you don't feel like that's an elite group.
No, and again, what bothers me, I think, more than anything, is that they're playing in this really bad division. Okay, that's playing another look. I think we're looking at the schedule and who they play next year and saying overall, boy, this schedule's tough. You know why you think it's tough? Because last year's was historically easy. In the grand scheme of things, it's not tough because it's still like in the 20s. Okay, so overall, it's still easier than most other teams' schedule. So really, it's not all that much different. Yeah, you got to play Dallas, you got to play Kansas City. That sucks. Okay, but when you talk about teams and you just got into it and you can get hot. I mean, have the Kansas City Chiefs needed to get hot? They're back-to-back defending champions. No. They got Patrick Mahomes, and they just kind of refill where they need to refill and do enough. But the Saints aren't doing that. I mean, they lost Drew Brees, and they're like, Sean Payton's gone now. He saw the writing on the wall. And they're just kind of like going status quo. I mean, maybe now they're changing a little bit, and I like that they bring in Clint Kubiak, but, dude, status quo don't work anymore. You can't just say, we got Drew Brees. You don't have Drew Brees. I mean, you got to make moves.
I don't think Clint Kubiak's long to stay. I think Clint is trying to.
This is a stepping stone.
Yeah, he's trying to get out of here quick, because he looked at this situation, and what do you see? It's like, you don't know if this coach is going to be around a long time. You don't know what this franchise is. So you took a job because you weren't going to get the credit no matter what in San Francisco. Right. that job is going to get always be tied to the head coach there. So you come to a place where the head coach is not an offensive guy, where whatever success you get will be attributed to you. And if it goes left, you'll be like, look what they gave me. Talent-wise, like they gave me no offensive line. They gave me an older quarterback. They gave me wide receivers that are unproven in a lot of ways. They gave me a running back who's been overused the last 3 years, and you're worried about it. Like the ready-built excuses if this fails are all there. Because like you said, this team is operated in a way where they're trying to tell you that players who have not performed are better than they are, or they're just, if they're not injured, we'll win. If they're not this, we'll win. If they do this, we'll win. And you've seen, your history is that these guys, no, it's the downside now. And you look at a team like the Texans, which bottomed out, and the formula is simple in the NFL. It's really simple. It's not easy to pull off, but it's simple, really. It's get a young quarterback under the age of 30 when they're on their first or second contract, because they're not rich yet, and have a good team around them. That's what the Chiefs found out. That's what every team in the league who's won consistently. It's very rare unless you have a ready-built team that can take in a Peyton Manning late in his career, or take in a Tom Brady late in his career and just add to what you already have. Most teams that win a Super Bowl, even the Saints included, won before Drew Brees turned 30. They didn't win a Super Bowl after he turned 30. It's before that quarterback turns 30. How old's Derek Carr?
33, 34. He's younger than Kirk Cousins, I will say that.
Yeah, but the Falcons, I think, are, has Kirk Cousins been to a Super Bowl? Have we seen Kirk Cousins in a Super Bowl?
No, because they play the Super Bowl in prime time. Okay, and they play the championship games in prime time too. So,
and Derek Carr's yet to win a playoff game.
Playoffs?
So we're counting on a guy who's past 30 to become. It's the same thing as the Taysom Hill thing, when everybody was arguing that a guy over 30 could just become a starting quarterback. This doesn't happen in the NFL.
No, and Taysom Hill is not a quarterback. I'm not. Look, there's still people out there actually. There's still people who believe that Taysom Hill should be the starting quarterback for this team, but that's the fans. That's finicky fans.
Yeah, we're being sold a bill of goods by the front office. Absolutely,
we are.
Absolutely.
But they keep buying the tickets. They keep selling them out. But I will say this: you put up another stinker like the last 2 years, and you don't fire Dennis Allen. If you do what you did the last 2 years and don't fire Dennis Allen, they're going to stop coming. You're going to have to actually go out there and sell season tickets. I mean, the easiest job in the world the past 15 years has been Saints season ticket manager. You're not going to have to worry about that. You're going to have to actually start making phone calls if they don't win this year.
I think they've forgotten, and that's the thing is a lot of people in New Orleans have forgotten. You and I haven't forgotten. No. I remember when Energy had to buy tickets, on Friday or Thursday, so that the Saints could avoid the cutoff of getting blacked out at home.
1,600 tickets. And you can go buy them for $5. Oh yeah,
they'd be begging you to come on that last day, to come down, buy a ticket, like you said, reduce the price, whatever they could do to get that blackout lifted. And because people didn't care. Because they knew, even there was a time when people believed that, again, the front office, the management didn't care about the fan base. And right now, I think you're right. We're headed to that period where they feel like you're resting on a championship that was won over a decade ago, and you're not giving us what we need.
David, you're younger than I, and I remember beyond that. I remember the days when we didn't have ESPN and 800 channels and we only had 5. And I don't get off my lawn. Get off my lawn. But I tell you, back in the day when I was growing up, maybe once a year, maybe Monday Night Football or some special game, they would sell it out, and it would be a huge deal. Seeing the Saints play at home on TV was a huge deal. I mean, I remember the Saints playing the 1-15 year. They played the Rams on the Monday night on Monday Night Football. And they were like 0-12, and somehow they ended up selling that game out. I have no idea how, but they did, and it was on TV, and it was like this big deal. I don't care if they stink. Saints are on Monday Night Football, and then Howard Cosell's telling us how much they stink. It's pretty cool. I don't want to go back to those days. Now, the blackout rules are lifted. They're gone, but, man, I mean, we were spoiled for so long. Sean Payton, Drew Brees spoiled this fan base for so long, and people don't realize how hard it is to be a Super Bowl contender every year. And now, you got you got Andy Reid just kind of like taking over the league. And go ask the Bills how hard it is to be a Super Bowl contender, because they had all the parts and they still couldn't do it. They still couldn't beat Mahomes. So, I mean, you talk about young quarterbacks, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. Look, I like Derek Carr a little bit more than you do, but man, something's got to change. Something's got to change here.
It's hard. I think it's hard to get behind Derek Carr because there's something that just feels that he's missing something. That thing that great quarterbacks have.
Just be
what I mean? Like,
positive, man. Be positive.
If we're talking about Kirk Cousins, it's that same thing. Everything has to go right.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna be mean to him, but I think it's just everything.
They really kind of are. They're very similar. Because Kirk Cousins can be pissy too.
Mm-hmm. There's something that you're not inviting Derek. I don't care what anybody says. Derek Carr's not the guy the guys on the team are calling and say, "Come over and hang out." Same with Kirk Cousins. Nobody's calling Kirk Cousins like, you know what this party is missing? Kirk. We need Kirk. Nobody's calling Derek Carr that way. We need Derek is going to turn it up.
Right, that was funny.
Need Derek. You know,
it's kind of mean in a way, and I feel bad if he's watching this. But it's kind of true. I mean, and he probably knows. He goes, "Man, they're not calling me. I don't know why. I try to be their friend. They just don't want to talk to me." So like, dude, it's just you just don't give that vibe. You just don't give the vibe that you're the guy that we're gonna hang out with. All right, I'm trying not to be mean. Let's talk about the position of first player Saints drafted. I think if you see the odds here in the left before we're moving on, because I do want to spend a little time with our extra point. And I think Vegas pretty much tells us not that we needed to know. I mean, people, we talk about the silly fans who want Taysom as quarterback. And if you're one of the silly fans watching the show, I love you. You're my friend. You can come over and hang out at a barbecue, and I can tell you about how wrong you are. It's all cool. We'll have a beer together. But there's no question that the Saints, more than anything, and I'll take the offensive line minus 300. That means if you want to bet on who the Saints are going to draft in the first, well, not in the first round, with their first pick, they may trade down, who knows. But you'd have to bet $300 to win 100. Vegas is telling you they're drafting an offensive lineman, and it's because they don't really have a tackle right now. Anders Pete, we don't know what's going to happen with him, if he's even going to stay. And Ryan Ramczyk, I got to be honest, I'm at the point where I'd be pretty shocked if Ryan Ramczyk plays in 2024.
Yeah, I think his career's over. It just seems like it's, and even if he wasn't, even if he was playing, we've just seen him deteriorate over the last 3 seasons, going from an all-pro to a guy whose career is in jeopardy. You're right. You don't really have tackles, but you don't really have any along the line outside of McCoy. You don't really have somebody that you can count on. I mean, you like James Hurst. He's done a decent job for you, but he's not what you would call an NFL, starter at that level. Young. He's there's serviceable, is the best you've got right now. And so, yeah, you need a lot of help. And the Saints have shown you their cards before. This is what they do. They draft offensive linemen early. It's what they do. They've tried it several times. It has not worked.
David, they can't screw this one up though, right? I mean, there are so many good offensive line. I mean, if Ole Fashano's there when you draft, you take him, right? You don't have to think about it. J.C. Latham, whatever, fine. You just take him. You don't really need to think about this, do you? Fuaga, whatever.
They can mess it up.
You think?
You know how the draft goes. Because all it takes is one person to throw the draft up. How the draft, it just takes one team to take the guy that you wanted, and teams get desperate.
And throw
so
him
if
off.
Somebody takes your guy.
Discombobulated.
Yeah, and then you're like, oh, we have to have one, and they reach. Because that's
they take a guy that could have got the second round.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, you're giving me like
how the draft is. You think you know the draft. We always think I think I know. And somebody throws that monkey wrench into it by grabbing somebody way too high, and you're like, what the hell? And then all of a sudden,
but you don't know, and you never will.
One of the great NFL quotes ever.
The best. I mean, and I'm honored to say that Jim Mora and look, I got to promote this show any way I can. Jim Moore, I think, was episode 87, if I recall correctly. He was 2 years ago. It was right before the season started. And I'm telling you, it was awesome. I got him to say, play playoffs? I mean, he said, and actually I didn't even have to get it. He said it on his own. He went through the whole spiel. He was awesome. He was a great guy. I thought I was going to get 15 minutes out of him. I got 45. It was fantastic. All right, let's move on.
I just want to ask you this. Let me quick ask you this about Jim Moore, though. Do you think, and I am a big on this, is I think that there's been an intentional kind of disregarding of that era, because you don't really see a lot of it in the Superdome or around the Saints. Like that whole era is kind of just been forgotten, and I think it was a really great era in Saints football. It didn't give us what we wanted, but it's just under discussed. I think it's just under discussed in the city.
I mean, part of it is because if you go back to that time, they had been losers for so long, and I mean, you know, I was born in 68, so they were only in their second year when I was born. So by the time I'm, 5 or 6 years old, they're still only been around for 6 or 7 years. So it was new to people here. And they growing up, and they didn't have a winning season until I was 20 years old. I mean, or 19 years old. I was 19 years old when they had their first winning season, which is insane to think about it. You go along that long. And then to have Jamora come in, and it was okay then that they were good enough to go to the playoffs. And think about what were they missing then, David? A quarterback. I mean, we could talk about the Cajun Cannon all we want, and he's fun and he's near and dear to our hearts, but he wasn't the quarterback he wasn't a championship caliber quarterback.
Not when you're in a division with Joe Montana. No. That's a ring.
You got the best linebacker core in NFL history, and all you needed was a quarterback that was. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to get on Bobby.
Yeah, it's another story. That's another story for another time.
But that was a different era, and it was a different field. The difference between then and now, I think more than anything, David, is I think back then there were probably 4 or 5 legit teams that could win the Super Bowl, and now there are probably like 8 or 9, right? Mm-hmm. So you just want to be one of those 8 or 9. You don't necessarily have to win, but think about it. At least if you're an Eagles fan, your team just went to the Super Bowl. You got Jalen Hurts. You got a great offensive line, even though Jason Kelce just retired. You got a solid enough defense, and you only need to make a couple moves in free agency, and you got a chance to be right back there again. If you're the Cowboys, I know you keep choking, but you have a championship caliber kind of team that can get there. The 49ers obviously show they can get there. The Bills, obviously you can get there. So you just want to be one of those 8 or 9 teams. Back then it was a lot harder to be one of those teams because the 49ers were so damn good, because the Bills kept winning in the damn AFC. And it was just different. It was a lot harder. So now you just want to be one of those teams that can get in the mix. And it's like, it's like Mike Detillier said a month and a half or so ago when he came on the show. There are 8 or 9 good teams, and everybody else is in football purgatory, and the Saints are in football purgatory right now.
There's nothing worse than being a 9 and 8.
Nothing.
A Jeff Fisher team. And right now the Saints are a Jeff Fisher squad.
Yeah, and you talked about the Houston Texans and Gabe Henderson in our green room, who helps me out every show here and is fantastic back there. But he's a big Houston Texans fan. They went from being a 4-win team to changing their entire fate with 1 draft pick. And I was wrong about C.J. Stroud, but if anything else, even if C.J. Stroud wouldn't have turned out to be what he is, you know what he did? He brought excitement and a breath of fresh air to a franchise that's so desperate. So did D'Amico Ryans, for that matter. And so you're talking about a pair of guys, D'Amico Ryans and C.J. Stroud, who breathed life into a moribund franchise that needed life breathed into them. So, and the Saints don't have that right now. Maybe they'll get it. Maybe they won't, but it won't be this year. All right. One of my, I don't want to call it my favorite day of the year, but it's so important, David. I'm a baseball historian, and I know you are too, being a part of MLBBros.com. Not MLBBro.com. It is such an important thing that Jackie Robinson broke the color by. We talk about being old, but neither one of us can put ourselves back in the 40s and beyond, and what baseball players had to go through, and the Josh Bells and the Satchel Pages, and just what it was for players back then to try to break into baseball when they knew they were good enough and never had a chance to. And the things that Jackie Robinson had to go through to make it so that other players that looked like him were able to play baseball, just play baseball. And we look at it today and we take things for granted. A lot of young people take things for granted. And even us older people do sometimes. And when I look at those number 42s on Jackie Robinson Day, it's important to me. And I know it's obviously important to you, and it should be important to a lot of people, because what Jackie Robinson did on April 15th, 1947 was a long time in the making, okay? It took a long time for that to happen, and he finally did it, and thank God for us all here today.
Yeah, I think, you said earlier that Michael Jordan is the greatest athlete in American history. I think Jackie Robinson is the most important athlete in American history,
I can't deny that.
because not only did he break the color barrier in baseball, I think he's the father of the modern civil rights movement. Without Jackie, there's no Martin Luther King. It doesn't get to that point, because what Jackie did, he had to take on, like you said, to be the first. And let's give shout out to Larry Doby too,
Yep.
who
Cleveland
did it
Indians
less,
first. Yep.
and it was less than a month later, same kind of thing, because it's two different leagues. What Jackie's doing in the National League, and Larry's doing in the American
And it was
League.
really two different leagues back then.
And you could, quite frankly, you could say that Larry, some of his situations going into the South, in the American League, are just as bad as what Jackie was going through. But Jackie being the first and having to do it with the Dodgers, the most prominent franchise of the time, doing it in Brooklyn, where you have the Yankees and the Giants, and just the center of baseball at the time, for him to do it, like you said, the way he did it, to endure it as a man, and talk about his whole life story. When you look at Jackie, baseball being not even his best sport, you could argue he was a better football player, a track athlete.
Yep.
He was a great running back at UCLA. He was, at one time, he was the all-time leading scorer in basketball at UCLA. Like, people forget how great an athlete he was, but also a soldier. Also, all the things that he did, he stood up for himself as a soldier, and for Black soldiers while he was on touring with in Europe. So it's his life is just a lesson for so many people, Black and white. And as an American, the ultimate undeniability, the things that we aspire to be as Americans, the things that we still have not gotten all the way to, the principles and ideals, he had to live it in a way that required so much sacrifice. And his wife, to Rachel, who to this day, protects his legacy, and endured those things as well. We have to give her flowers for doing that. Telling Jackie's story, it's never going to be enough, because we won't understand. The further you get away from it, it becomes incomprehensible how people dealt with him, the things that he faced. So it is important to keep reminding us that it wasn't that long ago. Like you said, you talk about 1947, that's my dad was born in 1950. You know what I'm saying? So, like, this stuff is not that far removed from any of us. We are less than a lifetime away from these things. And to act like it's some distant memory, I think it's like you said, people lose perspective, and it's important for us to maintain perspective, and also understand that there's great in America, and we are striving always to be great, but we can't forget that we're not there yet, and that we have things to do to be better. And we need to remind ourselves of our warts and our fractures and our shortcomings, because that's accountability. And ultimately, I think that's what we strive to be, is accountable people. And we fail at that as in a society. But Jackie Robinson is the ultimate reminder in sports of our accountability to self and our accountability to each other, as what it means to be a citizen and an American.
You want to put it into time perspective? I just told you I was born in 1968. So it was 21 years before I was born. Think about, if you're here to now, what was 21 years ago? I mean, you're talking about 2003. We're just 2 years away from Katrina. So, I mean, that kind of puts it in perspective about, you're right, it wasn't that long ago in the grand scheme of things. And the thing about the Jackie Robinson story that strikes me, that I watch over and over again when I go back and read about it and watch about it, is Branch Rickey, the owner of the Dodgers at the time, kind of telling him, look, dude, he didn't say, look, dude, but look, this is not going to be a piece of cake. You're going to have to bite your tongue. You're going to have to take every spike in the leg. You're going to have to take every racial slur. You're going to have to take every death threat, everything that comes your way, and you're just going to have to walk away with a smile. And I got to be honest. I mean, obviously, you see the color of my skin. I never had to go through a lot of things that I'm sure that you've had to go through. But neither one of us had to go through anything like what Jackie Robinson had to go through. And to be that ambassador and be that person, to imagine the things that he had to go through and walked away. I'm sure he didn't always walk away with a smile on his face, but he always walked away with class. And I don't know how he did it.
I mean, you could argue that it wasn't diabetes that killed Jackie
For
Robinson. It was
sure.
having to hold in all of that his entire life, to have to hold that in constantly. Like you said, that and only be able to express it as a competitor. The rage that you feel from all these things that are happening,
Yep.
even as a competitor, you still have to dial it back to 9.5 because he can't do the hard slides that the white players were doing. He couldn't take out somebody and have it be okay. So yeah, like I can't comprehend it. And I'm thankful that I don't have to do it. But that, like you said, though, we cannot forget it. We cannot forget it because whenever we talk about somebody else's sacrifice, whether we talk about military sacrifice, whether we talk about personal sacrifice, when people do those things on behalf of others, it is disrespectful to them to not remember it, to not revere it, to not respect that sacrifice. And I think we have to understand that what Jackie did was not just play baseball. He made a sacrifice for a lot of people. He gained some things, true, absolutely, but he gave up a lot to make sure that other people gain too.
Well, David, I hope that people, when they watch baseball today and they see teams wearing those number 42s, they actually take time and think about why they're wearing number 42 and not just like, oh, they're all wearing 42 today and they don't have their names on their jerseys. I mean, there's a reason why. And I hope that everybody out there at least takes a second or actually quite a few seconds to think about why they're doing it and, partly why we're living in a different world today. And the racial things that people go through on a day-to-day basis are lesser than they were in 1947, in large part because of Jackie Robinson. We're still struggling. We're still working to fix it, but we're a lot further along than we were in 1947. So there's prayers that we can continue to grow. So I hope they think
Absolutely.
of that when they see number 42. David, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been a lot of fun. And let's hope the next time we're talking about the Pelicans being happy times. Let's win this play-in game. Let's get to that series. I don't care if it's against Denver or if it's against Oklahoma City. It doesn't make a difference who it is. Just take that step, and that's what it's about.
Absolutely. Progress. Let's see something move forward and let's make some good decisions this offseason.
Absolutely. That's for another show. We have run out of time in this one. I want to thank David Grubb for coming on the show. I want to thank Gabe Henderson for being in the background and making sure I don't screw anything up. And more, I want to say thank you again to our new sponsor, Evangeline Securities. They will be presenting the show every time we come on the air going forward. I am so thankful to the people over there. I've got to meet them, Ron Hemelt, Nick Braden, my new friends over there, and we will be talking. We'll have a commercial for you soon on the show, and we will be just showing a lot of love. Speaking of a lot of love, a reminder to go onto our YouTube page, the Dattitude YouTube page, and click subscribe. You always know when we're going on. Then you don't have to worry about anything. Just tell us when we're going on. We just try to make it as easy as possible for you here in Dattitude. We'll be back Wednesday when we have D. Orlando Ledbetter. We'll be talking about the Atlanta Falcons and the NFC South. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. Make sure you come back. We'll see you then. Take it easy, my friends.
If you're looking for the latest scoop and in-depth interviews on the Saints, the NFL, the Pelicans, LSU, along with the best bets of the week, then lucky you. Along with high-powered, in-the-know guests who cover our teams, Jim Derry brings plenty of Dattitude. And he'll always tell you the way it is, or at least the way he thinks it is.